We had a video that we released on adding capacitors, combining capacitors, and we used a bunch of alligator clips, and the perspective that we had was at the table. I want to do that video as a part 2. This is the time that capacitors are the weakest, right in the beginning of summer. It pretty much never ends. Every other service call that you run is going to be a capacitor. Almost every service call that you go on, you should be checking capacitors, and you're going to run low on your inventory. As a result of that, mistakes can be made. If you're trying to combine capacitors, the purpose of this video is for you to know how to do that simply, how to check it when you're done before you put it in circuit, and how you can share this information very simply with someone else because you simply understand it. Stay tuned. We're going to learn this in a couple different perspectives. We have a smart board to help illustrate how to wire things up with input voltages and output. Helps us keep track of what was originally in and what was out. We can change colors, we have images. It's a great learning tool. Some people, we have many different applications that we want to go over the same subject on, so it's more expressed in the field. If I were to grab a capacitor out of the box, and I just took a set of wires and I were to jump it out, what value would I receive? Let's look at this. These different capacitors, they're on our truck, so we can typically use one capacitor and only that one capacitor, but we know we're going to run low, and you're going to have to add a couple of different capacitors together. So I have a capacitor here that's 20, and I have a capacitor here that's 5, and I have a capacitor here that's 15. And so, say I used my 20 already, and that was no longer back in my inventory, and I had another call that needed 20 microfarads. Well, I need to know how to add capacitors because it's not practical to make that second trip. So I would take my 15 and my 5, and I would just have to know how to successfully add those together. So we're going to go ahead and take our meter, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we have the values that the box suggests. We're going to put our meter on MFD. I'm going to go ahead and put the backlight on here. And we're going to look at the top of these capacitors and see if we have the microfarads right out of the box. So we have 5. And we have 14.7. And so if we add these together, then any combination where I put these, whether it's common in here, where I'm reading 0, I should be able to read 20, or I can just simply come here and read 20, or come here and read 20. So let's go ahead and wire these up. I'm going to do this bird's eye view, and we're going to pick one color, and we're going to just follow it through. So we're going to take white, and we're going to skip the first post, and we're just going to jump over, okay? And then we're going to take our second set of wires, black, and we're going to do the exact same thing, and we're going to go to the opposite post, and we should look like this. So I have black on one, black on the other, white on the other, white on the other, just like this, okay? And now in this state, I'm going to go and lay them down. We should be able to come to any capacitor, and we should read 20. So I have 19.79. We're going to call that 20. Over here, where I used to read 5, I should read 19.79, which we're going to call 20. And then I'm going to leave this lead over here, and I'm going to come back over to here, and the same thing, 19.79. because I have successfully added these capacitors together, no matter what combination I put common and or in and out, or in and out. Black would be, we would say in, if I said this is common, and the other would be out. Okay, and so now I have 20 microfarads, the same as I had here, 20 microfarads. Now if I wanted to add this 20 in conjunction with this 20 over here, then simply, I would just simply come off and I would wire up to one post. As you can see here, I'm going to go ahead and move these around a little bit. And then I'm going to come over here with my, let me go ahead and do this bird's eye view, see if that helps you. So I've gone from my whites, I've added a white. Now I have to add one of my black wires on and follow it through. Okay, now I can come back over to here, or I can come over here to this side over here. This is going to be a little easier to come over here. So I'm going to hold this up. So I have all my blacks on one side, all my whites on the other. And now we knew this was 20 microfarads, and we knew we made 20 here. So if I've done this right, then no matter what application I put my leads on between black and white, I should read the sum of 20 plus 20, which would be 40. So we'll come over to each capacitor. .36, so we'll call that 40. Again, let me go ahead and get my lead out of there so you can see the screen better. 39.36. We'll come over here. 39.36. Now I'm going to leave my lead here. I can come back to any combination I want. I'm still going to read that. And the reason why I'm showing you that is because I don't want you to think, well, where's my output? Pick one. So I can say white's my input, and it'll input for all of them, and black would be my output. Or I can say black is my input, and white will be my output. Okay? So I can send a wire into black and a wire out of white. As now I would call this hermetic. I wouldn't call these fans, because you're not going to have a fan that's going to require 40 microfarads. But if I had a fan capacitor that was 5 and another fan capacitor that was 15 and another fan capacitor that was 20, well, if I add all three of those together, I get 40 microfarads, right? Well, 40 microfarads, you're never going to put a 40 microfarad on a blower motor. Anything that's that big would be have an L3 to it, right? So when we're dealing with single phase, typically we don't get past 20 microfarads for a fan. So we would take these three fan capacitors, and now we would say they are now for a hermetic winding, a start winding for something much larger like a compressor. And then we're just going to keep adding these. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and say, what if I took a 10 microfarad? We're going to go ahead and see what it is out of the box. All right, just because the box says 10 doesn't mean it's going to be 10. And we have 9.97, okay? So let's just say I wanted to add this to it, but I made a mistake. Say I forgot to jump my commons, but I jumped all my whites out of it. Okay? And it already looks funny because I'm missing a wire. See, you put a wire on both sides, right? And you jump both sides out, but you didn't jump this side out. So this means that this is not a single capacitor. You have created a dual capacitor. So if your objective was to have a 40 plus 10 microfarad Yep, 10. If your objective was to make a 40 plus 10 microfarad dual capacitor, then you've done that. And we can test that out because I can come between, and I apologize, I won't get that because I have, let's see what we have here. We have 40 over here. We come over here, 7.96. We come over here, oops. Over here we have 7.96. Over here on the white, we have 39. So you see how that did not add up right? But this is a start to wiring a dual capacitor. Now, you're not going to get a large single capacitor out of that. So I'm going to fix the single capacitor issue, and then we'll go ahead and make a dual capacitor out of that same side. So I'm going to go ahead and take out of my black side, okay, run over to my other post that has nothing on it. Okay, we'll add black there. Now I can come between these two as a combination, and we'll read that 10 added to the 40, and we'll have 49.34. So basically 50 microfarads. All right, and so if I did that in any one of these combinations, I'm going to read the same microfarads, right? Every one of these, I'm going to read the same microfarads because we have successfully added them together. But if I was trying to get a dual capacitor, then what I would have to do is I would have to take out this one wire, leaving the commons. The black I'm using for commons here. So I would leave one additional post open. Now this could be used as a fan post where the rest of these whites could be used as an output for hermetic, right? Because it's a larger microfarad reading. Now I'm going to come between here and here, and I read 9.97. If I left my lead on here, how I know I have successfully made this a dual is I'll come over here and read between black and my open post, and I have 9.97. I'm going to continue with black, and I'm reading 9.97, 9.97. And so now I know that this has successfully been added into this equation, but as a dual capacitor. This is a dual capacitor. So we have 40 microfarads plus 10 microfarads. So it's a 40 plus 10. Now, if I wanted a different combination, then I can simply just say, I want to disconnect and I want my fan to be a 5 microfarad. So I can take this combination here, and I'm going to take the one that's 5. I'm going to pull all these wires off. I'm going to pull the one common, and I'm going to put it over here on 5. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put all my whites and jump them out. Give me a second here. And what we're going to do is we're going to put black on this one capacitor. And we're going to jump this one over here to this capacitor. And then we're going to have to take our white off of this one side over here where all the other whites are. We're going to have to add it over here. And so what we have done, add it over to here. I'm not looking at labels, so I have to remember which one is which. All right, so I have successfully added these 3 new values together, but left an open terminal, so it is a dual capacitor. And so if I wanted to see what that comes up to, we come over here, and on this last capacitor, we're going to read a small value of 5, and we have 5. Now I can leave my lead over here to know that I have successfully put this as a dual capacitor, and I can come over here to any one of these black terminals, and I have 5, 5 again, 5 again. So this is a successful dual capacitor. But what is my hermetic side? My hermetic side is 44.33. So we'll call that 45. And so I can leave my white right here on that hermetic. I'm going to come back to my small capacitor over here, and still I read 44.3. We're going to call it 45. Again, I read 45, and again, I read 45. And so if I can leave one lead on common, which I'm using black for that, and I come between hermetic, no matter where at, I can use any one of these as an output to my hermetic because they are all reading the same value of 45. Over here, if I left my leads on common everywhere, then I still, no matter what, I read 5. So I have a 45 plus 5 dual capacitor. And so we have taken 4 single capacitors and we have made one 45 plus 5 dual capacitor. Now, you know what else is a 45 plus 5 dual capacitor? That's a 45 plus 5 dual capacitor. So I have 45 plus 5 this way, or simply, if I had a well-stocked truck, I could put one 45 plus 5 in. And so that's how we have to make sure our trucks are stocked up so we don't wind up having to fit all of this inside of an air conditioner. Is it done by the book? Yeah, but it's a lot easier to put one capacitor in there. But still, if we have to get that family up and running, we've got to get back and stock our truck. It would be a good idea the next visit out there, if we're not going to make a special trip, to consolidate back to a 45 plus 5. A one capacitor that reads that number. Sure, that customer would appreciate that too. But this is a way to get through the day. It's also not really cost effective to take 4 capacitors to build what one capacitor could do. When you get into common sizes, you want to start stocking a higher volume of those common sizes so you can get through your day without being in this situation. But still very important to know, because here's what's very common. I have a 45 plus 5, and say I needed a 55 plus 5 dual. Well, we can take all of our connectors off of these terminals, and we'll put our capacitors back over here out of the way. And let's look at other combinations. You see, we have a 10 here, and I have a 15 over here. And so if I needed to have a larger dual capacitor, then how I would do that, say I needed a 55 plus 5, and I had a 45 plus 5, and I had a 10. Well, I can take the 10, add it to the 45, and leave my 5 open, and that would give me 55 plus 5 if I added them together correctly. So we're going to go ahead and see what we have over here. We have 10 microfarads. Between common and Herm, we have 50 microfarads. I'm sorry, between common and fan, we have 5 microfarads. And between common and Herm, we have 45 microfarads. And so I can simply just take my commons, and I can jump out. Now if you notice, the common has 4 terminals, the Herm has 3, and the fan has 1. They do that for you, but if you look at the small single capacitor, both sides have 4 terminals on each post. It's because it doesn't matter which one you want to use for common. So I'm going to have to pick a side, and then that's going to be my new common. So I've added my commons together. But at this point, all I've done was add my common. So I have still a dual capacitor over here and a single capacitor over here. So to add these together, if I wanted 45 plus 10 to give me 55, I would have to add my Herm in my fan side over here. So let's go ahead and take Herm and let's jump it out to the fan side. And now we have added this capacitor to this side of this dual capacitor, leaving this post open, okay? And so now we should read our microfarads as 55 plus 5. So we're going to come over here to our last capacitor, and we read 55, it's 54.9, we're going to call that 55. I'm going to leave my lead on common. I'm going to come over here to this fan, and I should read 4.9, which is basically 5. And same thing, I can come over here just to this one capacitor and say, hey, between common and fan, I got 5, and between common and Herm, I've got 55. There you go. Okay, and so we've got a very practical situation where maybe I wouldn't add all those other capacitors to get 45 plus 5 dual, but I can take this 45 plus 5 and take this 5, and I can make it a dual capacitor, a larger dual capacitor. Now let's say I need a larger single capacitor. Could I do that with just this one single capacitor? Yes, I can. Let's go ahead and read what it says. Between common and fan, we've got 5. And between common and Herm, we have got 45. And so if I were to take just one terminal and just jump out, say, hermetic and fan together, then we have taken a dual capacitor and we have now made it a single capacitor. So I can come between common and fan, and now I read 50 microfarads. Between common and Herm, and I now read 50 microfarads. If I wanted to add this one capacitor, which is 10 microfarads, to it to get to 60, then very simply, we would have to take and add one post to common, okay? And then we would have to take our hermetic post over here and run it to the other side of the capacitor, okay? And then when we check our microfarads, we should read 60 microfarads. So I'm going to come here between common and Herm, and now I read 59.9, which is 60. I can come over here to my fan, common and fan, and I still read the same microfarads. I'll leave my lead here, I'll come over to here, I'm still reading the same microfarads, 59.9, which is 60. I can come over here to my last capacitor, where I used to read 10, and I'm still reading 59.9. That's because I have successfully added them together. So anytime you add capacitors, you want to make sure you check your math at the very end, because you make one mistake, your meter's going to catch it before you put this in circuit. And what I mean by put it in circuit, I mean by energizing your common terminal, picking an output, and running that into the start winding of either the compressor, or if it's a small capacitor, the fan motor. You may need a 10 microfarad capacitor for your fan motor. Maybe you need to take two 5s, add them together to get 10. We can do that real quick. What is this one? This is 10. I have two 5s here. I'm going to just move this capacitor over here. We'll take our 10, move it over here, and we'll take these two 5s. If I have to get a 10 microfarad out of two 5s, right, very simply, this is something that happens quite often. Let's go ahead and see what our values are before we even get started. Let's go between these two capacitors, and we get 4.9. We're going to call that 5. Between these two over here, we get 5. So we want to add these together. Then you're going to have to take both commons. You're going to have to add them together. And then you're going to have to take your fan terminals and add those together. Just like that. And so now we'll go ahead and we'll check our math. And between any combination, we should receive 10 microfarads. We have 9.98, so we have 10. I'll come over here and we read 10. I'll come over to here and we still read 10. And so there we have it. We have made a 10 microfarad capacitor. Strongly suggest, if you're unfamiliar with this, practice to get familiar with it. If you have a lot of capacitors, you can make these wires up. All I've done is I've just taken 2 different colors. You don't have to. You can take alligator clips like I've used in part 1 video. But basically you want to take these and just put some female connectors on each end, and that's all you're doing, is you're just connecting the dots. All right, stay tuned. We're going to take this to smartboard, and hopefully we can wrap it up here soon. All right, so over here at the smartboard, I've got an image of a dual capacitor, and I have 4 single capacitors. I'm gonna show you many different scenarios how to take single capacitors and get a larger single capacitor out of it, and also how to take a stack of single capacitors and get a dual capacitor out of it. We're going to take the dual capacitor. We're pretty much going to do the same thing. How do I clone this image, get another dual capacitor? How do I make a large single capacitor? How do I get a double dual? How do I get a large single dual? And I just want to continue to do this until I feel that I've expressed it enough, and that you at that point can just simply rewind it, watch the video as many times as you need, so you simply understand it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take this first image. I'm just going to move it out of the way, and we're going to talk about the single capacitors. Now I'm going to go ahead and just blow this image up so it's larger. Okay, go ahead and put it over here. And let's just say that we have 4 single capacitors. I'm going to go ahead and say we need to not worry about which side is going to be Herm, or will that side become fan? And how do I know it's Herm and fan and which side is going to be common? It doesn't matter. All right, when you take a capacitor, all right, there is an input and there is an output. It does not matter which direction the input comes. Wherever that input is coming, the opposite post will be your output. This is when we're dealing with single capacitors. And when we do that, you know, what I'm suggesting is, if this is in, then this is out, then that means this becomes common. And if I'm using one capacitor and that's it, then I would say that that is fan. The reason what makes this fan is the range of microfarads that I'm going to have on this single capacitor will be less than 20. Maybe I can find one that's a little bit more than that, but it's going to be pretty much less than 20. So if I was using a permanent split capacitor motor, right, like a blower motor, there are some blower motors that get up to 20 microfarads on a single capacitor. So if I said that I had a capacitor that was 5, 10, and 7.5, and this one was, we'll just say, 20. Then any one of these could have a common input, output. I can do this one, output, input. I can do this one, input, output. It does not matter. But wherever my input is coming from, right, will be my common. Okay? Because you are sending one leg of power into the capacitor, and then the energy is being released. So it's an output. And so how do we know if this is a fan capacitor? Because typically when we're dealing with small capacitors, we're utilizing them on fan motors. These capacitors typically are not labeled, your commons and your fans. Typically when you get into labeled capacitors, you're dealing with a dual capacitor. And the reason why they label them is to give you an idea of which terminal is common, and we're going to talk about that because sometimes they get rusted and that corrosion is on there and you can't tell which one's common, Herm, or fan. So we'll talk about that. I'm going to go ahead and just erase everything that I put on here. And we're going to go ahead and add some of these capacitors right now. Okay, so we're going to say everything over here is one side and everything over here is another side. So start looking at your capacitors like this. So if I said I wanted to add all these capacitors, then your job, let's just say this was a 5, this was a 5, this was a 5, and say, we'll just say this is a 10. And say I needed 25 microfarads. Then to do this properly, I would have to jump out every single one of these on one side, and then I would have to jump out every single one of these on the other side in order to get to a total of 25. And so we're going to do that one more time. All right, so if I said that if I were to take this size capacitor, which is 5, we're going to say this one is 5, and I were to simply just jump these two terminals out, okay? And I'm trying to achieve 10. Right now, I have not done that because I have one common input, which is, okay, common for input, and we'll say this is L1 or L2. So I've placed a common terminal here and here where I have L1 here, now I have L1 here, but I still have got two outputs. So this is still 5 microfarads, and this is still 5 microfarads. So if I was trying to combine and get 10, then what I would have to do is I have to come over here on my other side, and I have to take this terminal and add it to this terminal, and then let's just say my one output, okay, would now be, I'm going to do this in red, 10. That is how I would add that together. This is a very simple way, taking two 5s, add them together, both sides, and getting 10. Now, if you wanted to add more to it, okay, we can say that here's another 5. Then simply we would come over here and we would bring this down. So now they're all sharing a common, right? But if I don't jump it to this, then what I will have, okay, is a dual capacitor, because this is 5 and that is 10. So I have a 10 plus 5 dual. If I wanted to make it a large single, then I have to add this side over here back up to here, and then I'm adding, so I have my inputs and then my outputs are all adding together, and that would make this final output, would be 15. Okay, so let's just say that this one down here all by itself was a 15 microfarad. If I came down here and said I wanted to add this capacitor into it, and I do not add this back up, then I still have a dual, because this is one capacitor that's 15, and over here this is also 15. But if I'm trying to achieve 30, if that's my goal, all right, oops, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over and I need to jump this back out to here. And what that will do is that will change this value to 15 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5, which will be 30. Now I have a 30 single microfarad. And so say I needed to, say I needed a 20 plus 10. Well, very simply, I can come over here and I can just delete this one jumper right there. All my commons are together, and then I'll erase this value, and then we can simply add it out. All right. We have now two outputs. So we have 15 plus 5, this gives me 20 microfarads. And then I have 5 plus 5, that gives me 10. So I have now a dual capacitor because I have a 20 plus 10. If I wanted to make that a 25 plus 5, then I would just take out this one combination right here. I'm going to go ahead and erase this because we already know that's going to change. Matter of fact, I'm going to change my output too, and I'm going to change this number. So I'm going to run this up to this capacitor, and I'm not going to jump it. I'm just going to say I still need a dual capacitor. But because it's not jumped here, I now have a dual capacitor. This is one capacitor all by itself where I'm getting 5. And so I'm going to put 5 here. And then this output will be the 5 plus 5 plus 15, which would be 25. So now I have a dual capacitor where it is 25 plus 5. Okay. Let's go ahead and take a dual capacitor and let's look at making a single capacitor out of this, because here we have a bunch of single capacitors that we're trying to make either a larger single or a dual. So what we're going to do is we're now going to take and we're going to erase these numbers, and then we're going to check out and see what a dual capacitor made into a single capacitor would look like. I'm going to move this over. We're going to take this image and we'll see what that looks like. All right, so now we're at the dual capacitor. If we wanted to make a larger single capacitor, we have to look at just a couple of simple things. One, our input will be common. All right, so that's going to be L1 or L2. I'm just going to go ahead and erase one because we don't want to leave L1 and L2 up there. So just pick one, L1 or L2. That'll be your input. All right, it's dual because I have two different outputs. So there's two different outputs. So I can say that this is a 35 plus a 5. And so this would be my 5. And this would be my 35. And so we know this already. And so if we had to make this a dual capacitor, a single capacitor, then we would jump these two out, right? So, and then by the time we get our new output, we would have 35 plus 5, which would equal 40, right? And so if we were to jump this out, then what we would do is we would take the hermetic. Let me go ahead and do this. We will post here, okay, we would take off of one of the sides of the hermetic and the fan, and we would simply just jump these two together, and then we would come out with our additional post, and we would actually see what that brings, and our new hermetic would be 35 plus 5, which equals 40 microfarads. That's how we would do that. So I'm going to do that one more time. If we wanted to make a single capacitor, right, then what we would do is we would come in with our input, we would take our hermetic and our fan, we would add them together, and then our new output would be the combination of these two. So if that was a 50 and a 5, then together it would be a 55. So we would have 55 up here. So if this was 50 and this was 5, then adding them together, we would have 55. So this is taking a dual capacitor and making one large single capacitor out of it. All right, so now we're going to take two dual capacitors and we're going to create one larger single capacitor out of that. So we're going to go ahead and just clone this image and move this one over here. Okay, let's move that out the way. And so if we wanted to make one large capacitor, then we can say that over here, this is a, we'll just say this is a 30, a 5. We'll say this is a 40, and we'll say that this is a 5. All right, and so we would say we need L1 or L2. It'll come up, it'll tie into the common. We'll come out of the post, and we'll come back over, and we'll tie back into the other commons. Now all my commons are tied together, and say our goal was to get, one large single capacitor. So if we did that, and we wanted to get to 80 microfarads, we would simply take and jump out this 30 to this 5. We would come over here, we would come out, we would come back in over here to the second capacitor. We'll come out of this post, and we'll jump over here to the 5 side, and then by the time we come over here, let's do it this way, by the time we come out, we would have reached the total sum of 80 microfarads. And that would be one large single capacitor. Now we're going to go ahead and say we need to do a dual capacitor. How would we do a large dual capacitor? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and write the same values back down, and we're just going to not change it up too much. Let's just keep those values and see what we can do with that. If I need a larger dual capacitor, say I need a 75 plus 5 dual capacitor. Say that was my goal. And all I had was a 40 plus 5 dual and a 30 plus 5 dual. Well, then what I would do is I would come over here and I would first jump out my first capacitor. Okay. I would have L1 coming in, or L2, does not matter. Just pick one. I'm going to go ahead and jump my other common out. Okay. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to take my 30 side and I'm going to jump it over here. And at this point, I have now added 30 plus 5 plus 40. I have to put an output. So here would be my output. And then I wanted a dual capacitor. So this side over here, I'm not going to jump it to anything, but it would be an output. So if we look at, we have one input, right? And we have two outputs. So this output over here, this is 5 all by itself. And this output over here, this isn't 40 anymore. This is 30 plus 5, which is 35. All right. So we made one capacitor a single. We're leaving 35 microfarads. We left this capacitor a dual, but we've taken this 35 and we added 40 to it. So now 35 plus 40 is 75. So we have 75 leaving. So we have 75 leaving, and then we have 5 leaving. So last time we jumped the 5 to this, and we had 1 leaving at 80. Okay. Let's play with the numbers a little bit more. Let's go ahead and erase what we need to. We're not going to erase the values. It's just going to change how we jump things out. Okay. And let's say we needed a 70 plus 10 dual. So I need a 70 plus 10 dual. So you see I have my inputs. I'm just leaving them there. I'm taking the same arrangement. And now I'm going to take my 30 microfarads and I'm going to jump it over here to my 40 microfarad side. I'm going to come out of here with one value, and I already know that that's going to be 30 plus 40 equals 70. All right, now I need to get 10. So I'm going to come out of here with 10, and I'm going to come and I'm going to run it over here to fan, and then come out of here. And if I add those together, 5 plus 5, that equals 10. So now I have a 70 plus 10 dual capacitor. And that's as easy as this gets. I don't think it's necessary to change any of these values, because no matter what combination I give you, I can either take and get a larger single, or I can get a larger dual, and the two ways that I decided to do it. So I'm dual because I have 2 outputs. If I only had 1 output, I would be single. So let's look in, if I made one mistake and say I didn't jump these commons, then what I would have is these would not add up to anything. I would have a 30, a 5, a 40, and a 5 like I began with. In order for this to work, I have to have my commons jumped. All right, so I hope this video helps you out. You know, we went over capacitors quite a bit because it's a very common thing, and we wanted to make sure that anytime we were in front of you talking about start components or run components, we were talking about those. We also went over capacitors quite a bit in all of our motor videos, and we went over capacitors quite a bit in, I want to say, maybe 1 or 2 of our defrost control videos. Just the fact that it was maybe there, and maybe we weren't utilizing it as a focal point. But watch all of our videos as we take a subject and we'll stretch it out over a few videos, because we want to make sure it's well understood before we continue to move on. There's nothing that we're not going to cover. And this is a very big industry. So like our channel, subscribe to our channel, share this with others. There's a share button you can simply do that with. Leave a comment. We'll read those. If you're asking us to talk about something, we may have to wait a second before we get to it, but we do read those, and we will release videos on those subjects. Thank you. We appreciate your support. Stay safe. Stay tuned.